Hello, I'm professional attorney and very much amateur musician Scott Lesowitz, and I'm going to be discussing in this video how something likely went wrong, that someone was able to game the system to have an AI song hit #1 on a Billboard chart. Billboard is supposed to have rules and mechanisms in place so something like this does not happen. So Rick Beato made a video about how there was a lot of news stories about the AI song Walk My Walk by Breaking Rust reaching #1 on the Billboard country charts, but in reality it was only #1 in digital sales and had about 3,000 downloads, something that was lost in many of the headlines. And by the way, in the photos of Breaking Rust on YouTube and Spotify, there's just the picture of this one guy. Where's the rest of the band? Please let me know what you think in the comments. I'd like to see the theories. But since there is only a picture of the one guy and not the band, let's just call whoever is behind Breaking Rust simply Mr. Rust to keep things simple. So anyway, Rick assumes that Mr. Rust bought the vast majority of those downloads. And so let's assume that Mr. Rust bought all 3,000 downloads. Let's assume he paid $1 per download. Mr. Rust would presumably recapture the artist's share of the download purchase price. So really he would only be out whatever the services take is. So like, for instance, on iTunes, it's likely somewhere around 30 cents a download. So likely whoever, Mr. Rust, I'm sorry, I was saying Mr. Rust, likely was out only about, $900, give or take, from the 3,000 downloads, not $3,000. So I looked it up, and apparently Walk My Walk is closing in on 5 million streams on Spotify alone. And it looks like there are multiple official uploads on YouTube, and there's other uploads that they might be getting money from too. So there's probably at least 500,000 views, likely more on YouTube. And then also there's the boost that's been happening to the other, other songs from Mr. Rust, Breaking Rust. And so likely they're making well over $10,000 from this, likely a good amount more. So that's not so bad off, what appeared to be an investment of around $900. Okay, so Breaking Rust is certainly not the first to allegedly engage in, Billboard chart manipulation. Assuming that is indeed what happened, I have no personal knowledge. So if anything, Mr. Rust just found a cheaper way to do it. For many, many years, record companies and publishers and musicians have been trying to game the Billboard charts. In recent years, one way that was commonly done to game the system was through bundling a CD or digital download with the purchase of merchandise or concert ticket. So basically, the customer or the consumer, buys something they want, like a concert ticket or merch, and then they receive just thrown in a CD or digital download that they don't even care about. So it got so bad that in 2020, Billboard cracked down and theoretically stopped counting bundled sales for the rankings. Another method was to offer albums and digital downloads directly for sale to consumers at extremely low prices. So in a series of changes, Billboard cracked down on this by setting minimum prices at which a sale would count for determining Billboard rankings. So most notably, Billboard has rules limiting the number of purchases that can be made by one customer on one or even on one credit card. And depending on the circumstances, the limit is somewhere between 1 to 4. So Billboard also says that it works with a data partner and tracks sales data and employs mechanisms to identify illegitimate bulk purchases, such as requiring the use of geolocation and tracking IP and address data. And Billboard also has rules under which direct-to-consumer sites can be suspended from Billboard's ranking system if they have multiple violations. Well, despite all that, Walk My Walk hit #1 on the country digital sales category and generated a lot of lucrative publicity from it. And even if Billboard were now to retroactively reject the sales, so what? The damage has been done. The publicity has been earned. the streams and views have been earned and the revenue earned. And frankly, if Billboard took action, it would just increase. It'd be more publicity, it'd be a whole nother round of publicity. And by the way, the real story here that Rick Beato missed is that Breaking Rust has another song called Whiskey Don't Talk Back. That's just great. Awesome. So now, I'm in no way saying that Billboard does not take the steps it claims to prevent counting illegitimate sales. I'm also not saying that Billboard is, completely ineffective in its efforts. I understand that because it only took 3,000 sales to hit #1 on a digital sales chart, that it was presumably easier to pull this off and, game the system. And I assume an AI act is going to have, less reputational or long-term concerns about getting caught if they do. And also, they have more upside from a small-scale play like this, getting to #1 on an otherwise, obscure chart that no one thinks about. So assuming that Mr. Rust orchestrated the vast majority of the 3,000 purchases, I really am curious how he was able to game the system. I do not have an answer in this video. I'm just pointing out that this is not supposed to happen. So at the end of the day, I guess Mr. Rust is really handsome and smart. Okay, with that lame joke, thank you for watching and take care.